Right now, as you read this, your brain is quietly rehearsing something it does every single night, something it has done thousands of times, something you have never once witnessed. Think about that for a second. You have fallen asleep more times than you can count, every night of your life, and yet you cannot remember a single one of them. Not one. You can remember your first kiss. You can remember embarrassing things you did a decade ago that still make you cringe in the shower. But the exact moment you crossed from awake to asleep last night? Gone. Erased. It's like there's a door you walk through every night, and the instant you step past it, the memory of stepping through it vanishes. So here's the question that should honestly bother you a little more than it does. Why can't you remember falling asleep? And once you understand the answer, you are going to realize something slightly unsettling about how much of your own life your brain is quietly choosing not to record. Let's start with what's actually happening in those final seconds. You're lying in bed. Your thoughts start to drift. They get looser, stranger, more disconnected. You might picture a conversation that never happened, or see a flash of an image with no explanation. Scientists call this hypnagogia, the transition zone between waking and sleep. And it is one of the weirdest neurological states you experience every single day without ever paying attention to it. In this zone, your brain is not fully awake and not fully asleep. It's somewhere in between. And the reason you can't hold on to it is buried in how memory actually gets made. Because here's the thing most people get completely wrong about memory. You assume that if you experience something, you remember it. That your brain is like a camera, quietly recording everything you see and feel and think, filing it away for later. But that is not how memory works at all. Not even close. Your brain does not record your life. It reconstructs it. And for a memory to be stored in the first place, a very specific process has to happen. A part of your brain called the hippocampus has to take your short-term experience and convert it into a long-term memory. This process is called consolidation. Think of the hippocampus as the part of your brain that hits the save button. Without it, an experience just plays and disappears like a video that was never recorded. And here is the twist. As you fall asleep, the hippocampus starts to power down before the rest of your brain does. It essentially clocks out early. So in those final seconds before sleep, you are still having experiences. You are still thinking, still feeling, still drifting through those strange hypnagogic images. But the part of your brain responsible for saving those experiences has already gone offline. The lights are still on, but nobody is writing anything down. That's why the moment vanishes. Not because nothing happened, but because your brain simply stopped recording before you stopped experiencing. And there's real science backing this up. Researchers studying memory found that if you wake someone up just a few minutes after they drift off, they often have no memory of ever falling asleep. They'll swear they were still awake the whole time. This is why you can be gently nudged in the middle of dozing off and insist, completely honestly, I wasn't sleeping. Your brain never saved the evidence, so as far as you're concerned, it never happened. But listen to this. Because this is where it gets stranger. This same shutdown is the reason for something you have absolutely experienced. Have you ever been sitting in a boring meeting or on a long car ride and someone asks you a question and you snap back and realize you have no idea what was just said? You weren't asleep? Not really, but you weren't fully there either. You slipped into that hypnagogic zone for a few seconds, and because the save button was off, those seconds were simply never recorded. You lived them. You just don't own them. Now here's a question. If your brain switches off memory making the second you start to fade, how does anyone ever know exactly when they fell asleep? And the unsettling answer is, you don't. Nobody does. You can only ever know that you were asleep after the fact by noticing that time has passed. You never catch the moment itself. You only ever catch the aftermath. It's a bit like trying to watch yourself go unconscious. The very thing that would let you observe it is the thing being switched off. But this raises an even deeper question. Why would your brain be built this way? Why would evolution design a system that fails to record one of the most universal experiences of your entire life? And this is where it stops being a quirk and starts being a clue. Because your brain forgetting things is not a bug. It is one of its most important features. Think about what would happen if you remembered everything. Every sensation, every fleeting thought, every second of drifting off, every boring moment of every boring day, all of it stored with equal weight. You would drown in it. Your mind would be so cluttered with meaningless noise that you couldn't find the memories that actually matter. So your brain is ruthless. It is constantly making decisions about what is worth saving and what is worth throwing away. And the moment of falling asleep, from your brain's perspective, that's noise. There is nothing useful in remembering the exact instant you lost consciousness. So it doesn't bother, which means the forgetting is not a failure. It's a filter. Your brain is protecting you from your own life by refusing to record the parts that don't matter. And there is a name for how deep this goes. Researchers estimate that the vast majority of what you experience in any given day is never stored as long-term memory at all. Most of your life, in the technical sense, is simply forgotten within hours. You are not remembering your day. You are remembering the highlights your brain decided were worth keeping. Everything else quietly dissolves. And falling asleep is just the most obvious example of something that happens to you constantly, all day long, without you ever noticing. Now here's where it gets personal. Because this same machinery explains one of the most frustrating experiences in your life. Have you ever had a brilliant idea right as you were drifting off? A perfect solution to a problem, a genius thought, and you told yourself you'd remember it in the morning. And then morning came, and it was gone. Completely. You knew you had the idea. You just couldn't get it back. That is the hippocampus clocking out in real time. The idea was real, but it arrived after the save button was already switched off. This is why so many writers and inventors kept notebooks by their beds. They understood, without knowing the neuroscience, that ideas born at the edge of sleep are written on disappearing ink. If you don't capture them in the moment takes them with it. There's a well-known story that the inventor Thomas Edison used to nap holding steel balls in his hands. The instant he drifted off, his muscles would relax, the balls would drop, the crash would jolt him awake, and he'd catch whatever strange idea his half-asleep brain had just produced. He was, in effect, trying to sneak past his own hippocampus, trying to steal a memory his brain was about to delete, and it worked because that dreamy in-between state is where the mind makes wild, creative connections it would never make fully awake. The very state you can't remember is the state that might hold your best ideas. Which brings us back to that door, the one you walk through every single night and never remember crossing. You now know why. On one side is you, awake, thinking, experiencing. On the other side is sleep. And standing right at the threshold is the part of your brain that decides what gets remembered, quietly switching itself off just before you cross. So you make the journey blind, every night, and wake up on the other side with no memory of the trip. But here's the reflection I want to leave you with. The fact that you can't remember falling asleep is not really about sleep at all. It's a tiny nightly reminder of a much bigger truth. Your memory is not a recording of your life. It's a story your brain writes, and it decides what makes the final cut. Most of what happens to you is edited out before it's ever saved, and you will never know what was in those deleted scenes because the part of you that would remember them was already asleep. So tonight, when you lie down and start to drift, try something. Try to catch the exact moment you fall asleep. Try to feel yourself cross that threshold. I promise you this. You will fail. Every single time. Because the moment you finally cross it, the part of you that was watching will already be gone. And in the morning, you won't even remember that you tried.